Welcome to our session, Our Lives with Water. And today's guest is Jo Wilbraham and Madeline Hutchins. This is going to be a beautiful sharing about the legacy of Ellen Hutchins. And so I will just immediately bring Madeline in the top spot and ask, how are you related to Ellen's work? And yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful inspiration for me. But yeah, would you like to introduce yourself as well, Madeline?
Yes, certainly. I'm Ellen's great-great-grandniece, and Ellen was Ireland's first female botanist. She was active in Bantry Bay, which is on the west coast of Ireland, and it is a very, very beautiful place. It's my family is still there, the Hutchins family. Some of them still live there, and I visit. I've visited since I was a child, and I think I love the place as much as Ellen did. Um, and she was active between 1805 and 1813, studying seaweeds. As a young woman, she was aged 20 when she started, and 28 when she became too ill to do any more, and she died aged just 29. But she was studying seaweeds and also mosses, liverworts, and lichens. But a lot of those are on the coast as well as in the woodlands there and other habitats. She was finding new and rare seaweeds, making specimens and drawings, and sending these to James Townsend Mackay, who was the botanist at Trinity College Dublin. He looked after the botanic gardens there, and he sent them on to others who specialised in the seaweeds, including a chap called Dawson Turner, who lived on the East Anglian coast of England. And basically, I've been spending the last 10 years since I found some of Ellen's letters to her brothers and a drawing in a super value carrier bag, which was among my aunt's affairs after she died. I've spent the last 10 years researching Ellen's story and helping to run the annual Ellen Hutchins Festival in the Bantry area, which happens during Heritage Week in August each year.
Oh, I'm looking forward for that festival, and we will dig into that more. But I would also like now to ask Jo to introduce herself. And I know you're now based in Natural History Museum. How that is related to Ellen's work and Ellen's specimens she collected?
Well, hi, so my name's Jo Wilbraham. I'm the curator at the Natural History Museum in charge of looking after the seaweed collections. We have a large herbarium collection there of around 250,000 seaweed specimens, dried and preserved. So it's a huge resource for a lot of different kind of research. And Ellen's specimens are part of that collection. So they sit alongside specimens collected over the last 250 years from around the world. And each specimen tells a story. I mean, we're talking today about one particular specimen, in fact, that Ellen collected. And when you magnify those number of specimens, and we think every specimen's been collected by someone from a particular place, particular time. And when we think about all the data and information that's associated with these specimens, those stories, and how that's magnified, then the collection of herbarium sheets becomes not just a collection of, dried pressed seaweed specimens, but more like a library where each specimen is a book that we could open and we could find out a whole swathe of information. So it's part of my role to look after that collection and make it available and accessible as well, because we want these books to be read and used. And so that's how I've got involved with Ellen Hutchins' story. Been working with Madeline for over a few years now, as we've been looking for specimens and researching their details. And it's fantastic that some of these specimens get more attention now and more awareness, as well as Madeline's work has been able to show a spotlight onto these amazing specimens that are preserved to date. And the preservation is amazing. And we'll probably look a bit more at the specimens as we go on.
You for sharing, and I'm very curious also to hear a bit more about this. I would even want to say artwork, which is the visual of this series. Madeline, could you introduce a bit more also the local name of this particular seaweed we are looking at, and what was the story behind? Was there a letter from Ellen or something?
Yes, there's certainly a bit more information about it. And I mean, also, just as you say, it's almost an artwork. a huge amount of care and detail goes into Ellen's specimens. It takes quite a bit of work to get it to look like that, I can tell you, having tried. But yes, in terms of, she also produced a plant list of where she found, and sometimes notes on the plant list, and that covers the absolutely everything: the flowering plants, seaweeds, mosses, liverworts, and lichens. She found over 1,000. It was another task she was on. It was going to be published, but actually it never was, not in her time. But on it, she often notes where she found the things. And on this, she says, shore below Blue Hill. And that's really rather lovely, because it's a place it's now known as Beach. It's just outside Bantry. It's by the Bantry airstrip. It's got parking, and you can go down to the sea there and stand exactly where she did and look out right across the bay. Beautiful view. And it's a good place to be looking at the seaweeds, paddling around on the beach and seeing the seaweeds there. And particularly actually after a storm. If a storm has thrown stuff up, you get the most amazing collection of things on that little stretch of seashore. But yes, to one of her letters, we know she found this in 1807 from a letter. On the 15th of December 1807, she writes to Dawson Turner, and this is what she wrote. Mr. Mackay writes me that the ulva I have sent you, marked number 5, can you see the number 5 on the bottom of the specimen? It's this one she's talking about, was first described by you. I'm very glad to have met with it. Will you do me the favour to tell me its name, and also if you wish to have more specimens of it, or any of the plants I have sent? Those I have not written the names to, I shall know by the numbers. I now regret that I did not send you more of the plants of this bay, as you say you should have been glad to have any of them. However, I shall have them for you next summer. It would give me great pleasure that the little I can do should be of any use to you. I mean, Dawson Turner was an eminent botanist at the time. This is early on in Ellen's. This is only 2 years into her time as a botanist. I mean, she became significant, but at this stage, she clearly, she says in that same letter, she feels like she's a beginner. So she's terribly pleased that what she's found. And I mean, Bantry Bay is the co-star of her story. It's a very special place for seaweeds.
Well, thank you, Madeline. The more you talk about the bay, the more I want to go again there and yeah, explore or walk the shore and yeah, just see the area with her eyes maybe a bit as well. So thank you for sharing this storyline. I also would like to ask Jo about Ellen's sort of contribution to science. I mean, if you could also expand a little bit more of her sort of legacy or sort of internationally also used work, or sort of in a way, even if something is even named by Ellen, or yeah, would you like to bring us a bit into this vast amount of seaweeds she's been looking at and how that has helped internationally?
Oh, yeah, of course. So a lot of Ellen's specimens that we have preserved at the Natural History Museum, they're part of our current herbarium, and they are still very much actively researched and have been over the past many decades since she collected them. So some of the specimens that she collected and sent to her various correspondents, such as Turner, as Madeline mentioned, actually described new species, based on material that she'd found, and in some cases they honoured her legacy, as it were, and the appreciation for her work by naming the species after her as well. When you see the hutchinsiae as part of the species name, that's a good clue that was collected by Ellen, and particularly for type specimens where people had described a new species based on material that she'd collected. And they're particularly important because those specimens effectively hold that species name. Whenever a species is described as part of the rules in nomenclature, which are long and extremely tedious, but one of the very important things is that a new species name has to have a physical specimen to which it is tied. And if that means that people can go back and critically look at these species and decide, actually, what we didn't realise at the time was that this is the same as something else. So that's when names change and merge. And as we're all aware from our everyday lives and as gardeners, and people who appreciate plants will notice that names are always changing. And type specimens are a very crucial part of that process so that we can look back and reanalyze specimens, because there's always new ways with new tools as well to look at this material. So one of the quite interesting things about some of Ellen's specimens that we might have collaborated on with researchers perhaps quite recently in the last few years, there's certainly some of her material where researchers have taken very tiny fragments from the specimen to extract its DNA. So we can sequence the specimen, and then we can look at the evolutionary history of species, and these specimens provide evidence of how a species might be related to another, which is fascinating. And I suppose what I find just completely mind-boggling about this is, I mean, to imagine in Ellen's time when she was collecting these, that not only that the specimens would still exist 200 years later, but things that were of no concept of at the time, such as DNA and evolutionary history of these of how life's evolved, that these specimens will be used for that kind of science. And it does make you think, well, what we'll be using Ellen's specimens for in another 100 years' time, because we're constantly amazed at the new uses that we find for this biological material.
Thank you, John. Yeah, this actually brings me to the last sort of concluding note, which I would like also Madeline to comment, is on this inspiration. I mean, like Jo said, 200 years ago, and in the letter, she said something on the line of the little contribution, which actually turns out to be huge contribution. What would be maybe your advice for new explorers, and especially the ocean lovers and those who are just into the footsteps of becoming enthusiastic about the seas? What would be your sort of suggestion of keeping going and keeping exploring, as small it is, but it might be, with big consequences? What would be your sort of, advice for younger generation, maybe even?
And I suppose one thing that Ellen thought was terribly important was the significance of being resident in a place, of knowing a place really well, of being able to repeat visit to the same area to see the same plant as it develops. And I think there's something there about starting local, starting at home, starting with the actions literally on the doorstep, things nearby, and things that are overlooked. I think that was another focus that she had, as well as the seaweeds, the mosses, lichens, liverworts, things that it's very easy just to walk past every day and not see. So I think there's something, and at her time, another strand, I think, is at her time, it was all about understanding things better. It was about understanding. I think we've got further than that now. I think now it's about taking action to look after these native plants in their natural habitats. I think they are under threat, and we need plants. Humans need plants to live. The planet needs plants, and we need to look after the little, the often overlooked, and the on the doorstep. And local can feed global.
Wow, that was such a nice conclusion, Madeline. And I'm going to thank both of you for joining today's session. And I'm going to remind our listeners that today was Jo Wilbraham and Madeline Hutchins sharing the story of Ellen Hutchins. Thank you very much, both of you.